Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Enlightenment. I'm your host, Josh the Archon, and tonight we are going to get into a really good conversation that I love having. What we're going to end up talking about is capitalism versus socialism, and I think this is going to be a really good conversation. We're not doing a debate style or anything like that. We're just going to have a conversation between me and my friend, and we're just going to go back and forth based on that conversation about what is better, socialism or capitalism. But before we get started, I really do want to actually thank you all for coming up and thank you all for showing up. That's the first thing. I really do appreciate it, and it means a lot to me for you all showing up. So thank you very much. The second thing is that I want to also thank the people inside the chat at the moment. Linear, thank you so much for showing up. Much appreciated. And now I will thank the Patreon supporters that have helped me create this content in the first place. So I really want to thank Linear again for being a Patreon supporter. TART, Mikey Famine, and Laura Magee. Thank you all for actually helping me and supporting me while our channel grows. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody to a good friend of mine, Thomas, or as we can see, the OTC Atheist, or Off the Chain Atheist. Thomas, welcome. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Just happy that we can finally have this conversation. We've been kind of going back and forth in the back channels, and we can finally have this conversation with everybody here to sort of see, and it's up to them to decide what system that they find better at the end of our conversation. But before I move forward, please let our audience know a little bit about yourself if you don't
mind. Okay, I'm not sure what to say, really. Well, I grew up in the Methodist Church. From my age was, and as you know, it's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the more benign denominations, I guess. But I had questions early on when I was a kid, off and on, got and BS answers like, who we to question the Lord, or God works in mysterious ways and so on, which was, now go and play. And playtime was more important as a kid, so that was enough to distract me. But as I grew older, questions came back and so on, and started researching and looking for answers myself, and became atheist in my early 20s, somewhere around 23, 24, I think. Was a closet atheist for many years, only knew a couple others. And let's see, in 2016, I joined Facebook to try to find a couple other old friends from high school. That was the sole reason. Previous to that, I didn't want anything to do with social media. But I ended up finding atheist groups and finding out, well, hey, there's a lot more people out there that think this way than I realized. In 2018, I joined the atheist community Austin. It was pretty cool. In 2019, it organized the first Atheist Day or ATX Capitol rally at the state capitol. It was presented by the ACA. And let's see. I've got two merch shops. I do a graphic design hobby. I've got a couple of merch shops for that. One of them, which is all atheist apparel. Another one is miscellaneous, different themes, whatnot. Other than that, I'm not sure what I can add. I don't do it all. I use social media to communicate with friends and try to post about stuff that matters. Bring people's attention to stuff like this stuff.
No, makes sense. Thank you very much. And yeah, that's actually really cool. And I hope that individuals, and by the way, anybody who's interested within Thomas's shop, and stuff like that, like what he's actually selling, it's inside the description below. So if you look below, you'll see the link that will show you to the flow chart that he has with everything that he has done so far and everything that he will do in the future. So if you're interested, please give it a check. I promise you, you will like the things that he has actually done so far. And I have all the how can I say it? The future will probably be even better than prior to. So if you want to check it out, please check it out. It would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, that link leads to all my social links and my shop links and so on. So
absolutely,
got it all there. It's also got a video. It's a link to the video for the first Atheist Day ATS 2019 event. That's on there also.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, there's a plethora of things that are on that flow chart. So please check in the description below in order to see everything that is going to be coming up soon. If you're interested, you can jump on and you can actually see these events real time when they happen, right? So again, check in the description below. Okay, so without further ado, because right now I will be arguing, or not arguing, but I'll be conversating based on capitalism. I think capitalism is the best system that we have so far, and I think that is the fundamental system that will propel our civilization ever forward. And my friend over here, Thomas, off the chain atheist, he's going to be defending the socialistic claims. He will state that socialism is the best system that we have and that we should actually be propagating a more socialistic form of society. So if Thomas, since you are a guest, please, I want to give this to you in order to start if you want, or if you want me to start, that's perfectly fine too. It's up to you.
I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, so when we talk about capitalism, I think a lot of individuals focus on the United States of America, where they look at capitalism and they see what is called syndicalism coming to fruition towards a certain extent, where you can actually start to see the negative aspects of what is called a syndicalist or an oligarch society, because they have major lobbying power. Businesses have major lobbying power within the actual government, which then influences who gets elected, who doesn't get elected. And a lot of people think that the power is being taken away from them and being put into the big businesses, which I could say, at least within the United States, that is somewhat true. Though I do think that the people don't really realize how much power they do have. And I think that that's but that's besides the point. But where I'm talking about is I'm talking about more about the Singaporean system, the Taiwanese system, and these other really great models of capitalism which are out there, which actually benefit the whole rather than just benefiting the few, but allowing the few to actually ascertain their wealth and to grow their wealth as well. Because that's the reality of the situation. If the rich are not able to grow their wealth, or if you put too much taxation on them, they will leave your particular nation. And the innovation which comes from these businesses will also leave along with the business, which can cause massive amounts of issues and problems to just society itself and to not Western civilization, but at least within the United States, right? It'll cause, I don't want to say it costs less amount of innovation, because obviously the US is a very innovative nation indeed when it comes to businesses and when it comes to capital in general. But that's why I'm somebody who wants to show that the socialistic system is actually not beneficial, because if you're taxing the rich too much, as I stated beforehand, they're going to leave for greener pastures. And more businesses leaving from the US will actually cause a huge amount of economic distress within the United States itself, probably causing massive amount, like a recession or even worse off, right? which a lot of people don't necessarily think about. So this is the first thing that I wish to bring forward, because I think a lot of people, when they look of taxing the rich, they don't necessarily understand, in my opinion, that the rich in itself isn't the actual issue. It's the way that the government is formed, which is the issue, right? It's not the rich who are the issue. They're just like every other ordinary person that is within the United States, but they've worked hard in order to get to where they are right now. And that's the reality of the situation itself, I think. So if this is the reality, right, of rich individuals working, and I'm not talking about wealth being passed down from generation to generation. I'm just talking about wealth in and of itself being generated by a person who has actually created a very good idea, such as like Apple, for instance. Apple is a really great company. But the thing is that this company can only have come about through the capitalistic system. I don't believe that a socialistic system would have been able to create a company such as Apple or such as Google or the plethora of other companies that are within the United States right now that everybody is actually benefiting from, right? So that's just my own opinion for now, but I would like to pass it on to Thomas in order for him to actually explain his side of the situation.
Right. Well, actually, it's not so much that I'm defending or going for pure socialism. What I think is more feasible is democratic socialism, or if we never just, let me suppose the bookmark I had, but I think the best system we could have would be a combination, really, of capitalism and socialism and so on. It's you should take the best of each one. It's like anything in life. You take like Bruce Lee did with martial arts. He studied several different disciplines and he took the best from each one and formed his own. But Sweden, for example, let's see where that would go. They've adhered to the Nordic model, which refers to the economic and social policies common to the Nordic countries, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and so on. And if theirs is a democratic socialist system. It supports the welfare state, universalist welfare state to promote social mobility, but remains committed to a market-based economy that's partially fueled by private enterprise. So they've got a mixed, system. It's a mixed market capitalist economic system with private ownership. But to regulate the capitalist economy, they allow free trade combined with collective risk sharing. Yeah, so they're combining socialism and capitalism together. Their political ideology is socialist, but the economy is capitalist. So I do think capitalism is necessary, but what I argue against with capitalism is unfettered capitalism. Because let's see, how do I word this? I had a chart here somewhere. Where'd it go? I think I lost my mark. But
it's fine. It's okay.
it's here somewhere.
But I would like to push back because I think that a system that has both in it is also kind of doomed to fail to begin with, right? Because with a socialistic system, what you need is people behind that socialistic system in order to prop it up. So a lot of people, and that's why socialism was so pushed prior to the 20th century, was because they realized that how many people were having children at that time, at least within their particular nations, it would be beneficial to have a socialistic system, because the kids of those who have grown older would be able to hold the burden of taxation, because people would be taxed evenly based on the amount of children that they want. Actually, that's not really the system, but I mean, the more children you have means that the more you have put into the workforce in itself, right? But the reality is that just like with today, what we're seeing is a workforce that, or not a workforce, but our birth rate is actually dropping on a very, what would be called, if we didn't have immigration, very deadly level in a sense for the stability of a socialistic system. So the reality is that even if you have a socialistic system melded in with a democratic system, that's right, Linear, with a democratic system, the reality would be that the system would be unfeasible, because that means our children that are less than the amount of people who are growing older are going to have more of a tax burden to bear, right? So the reality is that the socialistic system will fail due to overtaxation, like we're seeing right now with a lot of nations, of the middle class and of those who are below middle class. So that's the reality of the situation. But anyways, my apologies. Please jump in.
Okay, that's all right. I was wondering if you had some examples on as far as the overtaxation, because a lot of the, like I said, the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, so on, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, they all do pretty well. And Sweden actually, as back in 2020, I don't remember the exact ranking, but they rank high on the Global Peace Index, and they're ranked in the top 10 of the World Happiness report. And because it's just the government meets most of their needs, accumulating wealth isn't, a concern with them. They're happy with what they're from, because, they have higher tax rates than we do, but most of these countries provide, free healthcare. Your healthcare is, taken care of. Your school is taken care of, and so on. People are taken care of more so.
That makes sense, but at the same, you're right. But one of the things I would like to push back on, though, is that the reason why the Norwegians in the Nordic system, wow, that had a little skip over in my brain. The Nordic system works so well, in a sense, is because they're a homogenous system. And let alone, what I would also like to say is that the Nordic countries in general have literally altogether have the population of Canada, if we really look at it, right? So they only have close to I think it's Sweden that has the most people within it, with like 9 million people or something like that, 8 or 9 million people. And then if you look at the other Nordic countries, you see a lower extent of their population, right? But they're all homogenous in a sense. So that, I find, is the only reason how they were able to get to where they're at right now. Right? Because if you look at ever since, I believe it's 2014, there has definitely been problems with the social democratic system when it comes to having individuals coming to or having immigrants go to these Nordic places in the first place, right? So that's the whole entire point, is that I do agree that the Nordic system, because it was based on community and the community, the homogenous community, that it made sense. But let alone with its population and also with its homogeneity, I don't think that we can utilize the same exact system within the U.S. So it's a nice system, but it's not at all the system that we can enforce in the United States of America, because we're too diverse. We have many more minorities than Sweden, Norway, Finland, any of those nations. And in general, it just seems that if we did try it here, we would be, quote unquote, I guess, I don't want to say doomed to fail, but I don't think it would do as well here within the United States, or maybe even within North America in general. But I do believe, however, that there are certain systems of capitalism, and that's why I go again to Singapore and to Taiwan, because they're extremely capitalistic. Their thing is that they don't necessarily mind how much money uh, a corporation makes, or how much money a an individual makes. But the thing that they do care about is that corporation or is that individual reinvesting within the society that helped them rise in the first place, right?
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I think is feasible, because if you have somebody who's having hold on one second, we have a question right here. Why do you think a group being homogenous is important for socialism? Can you explain that a bit more? Linear, I definitely can explain that. I think the reason why socialism can only work on a homogenous, my bad, I keep saying homogenous nation, is because you have you have the same culture, you have the same um, what, my God, my brain is starting to skip on me now. You have the same culture, you have the same practices, and let alone uh, you've kind of all worked together in order to create the system, or well, predominantly is a culture, and the social practices are the same. So for that to so socialism is easier to come by, or to create underneath those said systems. And if you don't have those said systems, look at any other socialistic or quote unquote socialistic nations that are out there. It's much more, how could I say it? It's more difficult for that nation to provide for socialistic or a socialist type norm, because you have different languages. Oh, that's true. Languages too. I forgot. Languages are something that is huge within a nation as well. So if you have different languages, if you have a different culture, if you have a different social norms,
Mhm.
well, right there you can create a socialist state. But if you start adding large amounts of minorities into that, it starts to become much harder to create a proper socialist
See,
civilization.
I mean, I disagree with that because I don't know, in capitalism, for unfettered capitalism like we have here in the U.S., you know, there's several things that come, negatives out of that. Allowing for our unfettered capitalist systems that we go by now is what allows, for the ever widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. Allowing people to accumulate too much wealth, on their own, while other people, for example, what's his face that owns Amazon, even, yeah, he has got a great idea.
Oh, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos. Okay, or any other one. Yeah, they may have had the money, whether it's from family money or however, to start off the business and so on. But without the workers, he'd have nothing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, no,
So,
no. You're
they,
definitely right. You're definitely right on that.
uh, let's see, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But democratic socialism, it provides for a more equal society, reduction of poverty, like I said before, the universal health care, but it promotes promotes good social welfare rather than selfish aims, self and greed. And a more equal society, it actually increases social cohesion. And I don't think that is dependent upon culture. So,
That is interesting, because when we look at other nations that try to provide for a socialistic society, and don't
mhm.
get me wrong, I know a lot of people, because of the brutality of said regimes, would state, well, no, that's not real socialism. But for
They weren't.
instance,
They were dictatorships.
Yeah, but there's a difference, because if we're talking about Stalinism, yeah, I would completely agree. That is a dictatorship, absolutely. But if we're talking about Leninism, Leninism was completely different from a dictatorship. It was obviously the dictatorship of the proletariat, but that meant the dictatorship of the workers, right? And that's
Right.
why with
Yeah.
Lenin, the reason why he was able to get to that height was because with the Bolsheviks, which literally meant vanguard, the vanguard group of the Socialist Party led to what they were trying to do was at first gain hold of Russia, right? But then after help Russians see how a socialistic system really worked. The issue was that definitely for the time, a lot of individuals were pastoral peoples. Like socialism was only supposed to literally happen underneath a modernized system. It wasn't meant to happen underneath a pastoral system. So obviously, when they tried to bring forth a socialistic system into a pastoral system in the first place, it went horribly awry, because the individuals who were peasants and stuff like that, or farmers, let's just use it a more nice term, the farmers, for instance, did not see socialism as a benefit to them, because they didn't see the collectivization of their land, and let alone of their crops, to be beneficial to them. And they were looking just to make a dollar more than actually helping out everybody within Russia. And obviously that couldn't have even happened in the first place, because, and it's true, because the socialists were right on that, Russia, and at the time China, was very backwards in a sense, based on predominantly focusing on agriculture rather than modernizing their cities and stuff. And even underneath, let's just say, Shanghai Shek in China, there was definitely a problem that came about there in the first place, right? So I think one of the big problems of socialism is that you need to have a system of modernization in the first place. But even then, right, the problem was that they missed another point, which was the culture and based on the homogeny of a particular group of peoples. Because if you're looking at even Russia, for instance, Russia has a large amount of different cultures within its landmass. So when they were trying to bring people into what was then called the Soviet Union, or CCCP, for instance, the people were wondering, well, what would happen to our minority? And would we have our own language, or would we be forced to learn Russian and everything like that? And that caused a huge problem with socialism in the first place, and let alone the cultural differences of a more atheistic mindset compared to a religious mindset. And there's so many more things which are out there, or so many more problems which cause socialism, at least within that nation, to fail. But I also see because I like to bring things in the here and now rather than focusing on the past. So I'll bring it to the here and now. Social democracy, for instance, was working perfectly fine until 2014. After 2014, and obviously with what was happening within Syria at the time, it's understandable why people would open up their country's borders and stuff like that. But the reality is that there's such a large influx of individuals coming into these countries that were predominantly homogenous at that time, caused huge rifts within the society itself. And the rise of what is called the quote-unquote moderates and the rise of the ultra-right within Sweden, Finland, and Norway, and let alone, I was going to say Copenhagen, but that is a city. Denmark. So this is a huge problem, because it kind of shows that social democracy can only work underneath a homogeneous system. And that the more individuals that you add to it that have a different outlook in life and who are a visible minority that looks different from the majority, automatically causes large problems within or puts a stick within the spokes of social democrats. And that's why I think what we're seeing now within Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark is exactly is the negative aspect of what social democracy actually gives to people, because it's more based, in my opinion, on the homogenous than it is based on the larger collective.
I had a bookmark here somewhere, but I must have accidentally deleted it. There's difference though between democratic socialism and social democracy. They're not, they sound the same, similar. Well, they are similar, but they're not quite the same. Let's see. Where is one more? For example, let's see, where is it? I think. I lost it. Damn it. I'll go back to that if I can find it later. Back on unfettered capitalism. Unfettered capitalism. Capitalism seeks. Where was it? Damn it. Capitalist economy. Is businesses controlled by individuals. They seek little or no government regulation, and so on. God damn it! Where did that bookmark go?
Sorry about that. I'll just move because it seems that my wonderful family is making a lot of noise for this conversation. So I'll move right in here. I'll close the door, and then we can have a...
Lost it.
My apologies.
It's all good.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I think we are good now. Hopefully I'm not lagging or anything like that.
Right.
All right, my apologies. So yes, unfettered capitalism. I do agree. Well, actually, the aspect is that capitalism, which I do kind of agree with, is that I guess you could say regulated underneath we're both blurry now.
Yeah, I've been blurry mine's been blurry the whole time.
How about now? Am I at least a little bit better? I know I'm just moving.
Yeah, you're a little clearer. Yeah.
I'm lagging now. God damn it. Yeah, I love my family dearly, but sometimes they make a lot of noise. But
you gotta have regulations, because without regulations in capitalist economy, it's always about making money, making more money. That's pretty much the primary goal of capitalism, is capital. From what I understand. But without regulation, that's what a lot of shit like Flint, Michigan, to happen. It allows without regulations, companies can just do what they want, and all they care about is making that dollar. They can screw over employees, they can fuck up the environment, and so on. And it's been shown, over and over with the oil companies, the oil spills and pipelines and whatnot, and other things that they gotta have regulation. Otherwise, they're gonna, I don't know how to word this. I wish I had that bookmark still.
It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine.
I apologize to everybody. I wasn't very prepared for this. I dozed off this afternoon when I should have been reading up. So I apologize to everybody.
No worries. This is literally an informal conversation, so it's perfectly fine. I wasn't like, this is a debate and let's go and swing at each other or whatever. Like, nah, this is just a conversation. So, Oh, perfect. Thank you, Linear. Thank you for letting me know. But the one thing that I would say is that when we look at unfettered capitalism, right, the situation is that it's not necessarily the individuals making more money, which is the problem. That is not the problem at all, in my opinion. The problem is based on how we can have those who are making money automatically kind of reinvest back into either the city that helped them get to that point, or to the nation in general, right? So if you had, let's just say, not anything that hinders them from making money, but something that kind of is like, well, if you reinvest within the society that has helped you get to this point.
That's the problem with our system. Our companies here don't. It's been proven time and time again. Back when they had the government bailout, and companies, got all this money back, and that was the thought. That was the thought process. We bail them out, give them companies this money. They're going to reinvest it, in their workers, and so on and so forth. But they didn't. Instead, that most of I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. There's one. There was a major one, but what most of these companies ended up doing was buying back their own stock. Instead of investing it in their employees, giving their employees better, raises, better benefits, and so on, they reinvested it in themselves.
Yeah. But I think
without, that's where the regulations would come in. You'd have to have government regulations in order for these companies. Basically, for these companies to do the right thing, there's got to be regulations and watchdogs, because otherwise they end up doing, whatever it takes, to make a buck. Increase their goal is to increase their profits, ever increasing. And why do profits have to continually increase? What?
Right. But the thing is that the profit of the individual doesn't necessarily matter. Sharina, could you close the door? Thank you. So fuck. Now my thoughts are off. Okay, I got it. So the thing isn't necessarily them making more money. That's not the problem. The problem, and for me, I think when we really look, and that's why again I have to call out on the Singaporean system, because the Singaporean system is extremely.
I don't know anything about the Singaporean or the Taiwanese or any of that, so you know a good bit more than me in this subject.
Right. Like with Singapore, for instance, what they were doing is that, like, for real, if you look at just Singapore, if you just look at, actually, I should have just hit it in the link too. Like, I should be the sponsor of Singapore at this very moment. I should just be like, yo, hit up on the link, look at Singapore, see what happens. But the reality is that 87% of the entire population of Singapore owns their own home. Like, that's impressive, because the thing is that when you own something, it rises your sense of morale rather than renting something, because renting is just like, okay, well, it's technically mine, but I can be evicted from this dwelling of mine if I don't pay, or if I don't do this, or if I don't do that. But literally, let's just move on there. So, but literally, the reality is that Singapore has given their people something that a lot of individuals in other nations don't have. And that's a place that they can call their own. They literally cannot be evicted from their homes or whatever. Like, they can leave their homes, pass it on to the next generation if they so well want, and after maybe downgrade to a smaller dwelling, which they can do, utilizing their money in order to pay for that smaller dwelling, while their child is able to have the dwelling of their parents if they have multiple kids or whatever the situation is, right? And that's something which is absolutely mind-blowing. And I think that we can, because obviously with a population of close to 6 million, a lot of people would look at me and say, well, we can't do that nationwide. And I would kind of agree with that. But the reality is that majority of nation at this very moment, the majority of the populations are within the cities. So if you utilize the Singaporean model, which is a city state, and use that as an application for just cities in general, you can definitely have something that is greater than what we have now for cities. And that's the thing. When people can have something better within their cities underneath a capitalistic model like Singapore, you can actually make things better for the citizens. You can literally promote.
So what's different about their capitalistic system exactly? And what is it about their capitalistic system that allows the home ownership? Because I don't know the numbers, but when you look at, the numbers for U.S. home ownership, most people don't own their homes. The bank owns their homes.
Exactly.
And they stay in, with refinancing and all that kind of stuff. It keeps people in debt.
Oh, you're absolutely right. But that's the thing, though. The way that Singapore does it is that in the way that they do it is that when you work, right, your money is automatically allocated. Like a lot of people say, oh, well, taxation, and well, we all get taxed and all our money gets put into taxes. And at the end, we get returns based on the taxes that we paid. Singapore does it completely freaking different. What it does is that when you're younger, it actually taxes you, but for a specific, like let's just say if you're going to school or you're working in order to to earn yourself a home, right? Most of your taxation will go to the Singapore. It's called HMD. So what that is the home development plan, in a sense. And what it does, so your fund constantly grows in order to help you earn your first home. That's the whole entire thing. And let alone when you are with somebody, both your incomes are coming together. So you have your own money, right? Which is something that's good. You have money going into the HMD. You got money going into your healthcare in a sense, and you have money going into something else. But the majority of it, and when you're young, goes into your home first, and everything like that. So all your income is being funneled in for you to own your first place. Next, which is really cool, is the older you get, the allocation of money then moves into a different spot, which is predominantly healthcare. The older you get, the less, the more, I don't want to say unhealthy you get, but the more that you start having like bodily breakdowns and stuff like that. So now, once you have your home, that money now funnels into your healthcare system and everything like that. Now, Singapore's healthcare system, which is beautiful, has a 5-tier system. Each system obviously is a tier up from the last. So if you're on the 5th, that means that you get like the best room, the best accommodations, everything like that. But obviously that makes sense when you're at tier 5. But if you're at tier 1, you're still able to utilize the actual most of the things that the rich could use and everything like that. If you have cancer, well, they'll help you out with chemo and everything like that to get rid of the cancer for a portion of the price. So what Singapore says is that we'll pay, well, if you're on tier 1, let's just say, we'll pay the majority of your bill. You just need to pay a certain portion of it or whatever. But the higher tier you go, the less the Singaporean government will pay and the more that you will have to pay, in a sense. But that's the best way to actually do it.
Okay, so this, what was the HM what?
HMD or
HMD
HMD.
fund.
One of the two, HMD or HMD.
So does each person have their own account that money is going into for future use for healthcare and whatnot?
Exactly.
And that's what they're, okay.
Exactly, because it's also tied in too, right? Like let's just say you were able with your partner to afford your first place, and you had enough money, because that's also another good thing too, is that your parents can pass down their money to you on their HMD, on the money that they have on HMD, right? So if they're able to pass it down to you, you can then boost up the amount of money that you can have in order to pay for your dwelling, right? Or you can take that HMD money if you don't need it and put it into your health care and everything like that. So you can be on a higher tier with better room and everything like that, rather than a more public room and everything. But still, you boost up your healthcare providing in a sense, but at the same time, you will always be cared for within the Singaporean in Singapore, and I think that's the best way to.
That whole thing sounds like it's got socialistic aspects to it.
The reality is that they actually fought tooth and nail against socialism because they found that socialism made individuals lazy. Their number one thing was to create a nation that works. So everybody needs to pull their own within the nation. However, they will provide certain things for you. The more that you actually work, your own money will go into generating into, as I stated, your home, your healthcare, your whatever the situation is. But you have to work. It's not like
okay. So what happens to those who are unable?
Well, that's actually a very good thing too, because what Singapore, and I think this would be the only thing that's probably socialistic about Singapore, is that if for those who might have disabilities or anything like that, actually the state does provide for them, in a sense, their livelihood and everything. But that's just the reality of the situation, right? Like you're going to have to provide, or not provide, but you're going to have to care for those who cannot care for themselves, right?
Right.
So I think that's the only thing that I would say is relatively socialistic about the Singaporean system. Other than that, everybody has to work in order to get what they want, and that's the thing that Singapore provides.
Yeah, that's that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I don't think would work here in the U.S. because I don't know. Part of the whole American dream, which is a lie in my opinion. Is that if you work hard enough, do your best, and you can succeed, so, and that's just not true for everybody. Whether it's disability or other or racial inequality, income inequality, which is fueled by capitalism. The income inequality is. And you're talking about taxes earlier. It's not that so much of paying higher taxes is they should pay their fair share. Look how much taxes we pay. Citizens pay compared. The corporation, for example, Bezos. What he pay in taxes? What did his corporation pay in taxes? Nothing, because of all the different loopholes, and those loopholes need to be closed. And the corporations need to be taxed, fairly. And that money can go back into the system. So.
Right. I think if we look at Jeff, because that's the one thing that I kind of look at too, is individuals who are innovating toward like helping innovate the nation in other ways. I think that there's certain individuals at this moment who look at I'll tackle that question, Linear, right after when I just finish this, because that's actually a pretty good question that you have there. But the reality, where was I going with that? Right. So when you're looking at, let's just say, Jeff Bezos and everything, I think what we need to look at is what are they providing in order to skip to skip the taxation, right? So for me, when I look at Jeff Bezos, I see I believe is called Space Blue, I believe, or something blue. I forget what the hell it's called. But
Blue Origin.
yeah, there you go. Thank you. Blue Origin, right? And when you really look at it, this is going to help. Well, that's more Virgin, like Virgin, which has Virgin Galactic in a sense, which I look at that and I see that as the whole new way of travel, which is going to help people greatly, just like how we fly in planes today in order to reach our destinations relatively quick. And with, I forget his goddamn name, Richard Branson, there you go. With Richard Branson, what he's going to do is say, you know what, I will give you the experience of space while getting to your location quicker. And literally, just like how we see with airplanes today, within probably
who is going to be able to utilize that service?
Well, at
not,
the moment,
not the common person. The common person's not going to have the money for that.
Well, not yet. That's the thing, because the more people who utilize it means that the prices start to drop. And just like how we see with air travel at this very moment, air travel at specific times, I'm not saying all the time, but in specific times during the year, is way lower compared to, let's just say, during
and that's pretty much price gouging, in my opinion. When they raise rates for holiday travel or whatnot, it's just like the hotels here in Austin. Anytime there's a special event, or whatnot, the hotels will raise their rates. And travel companies do the same thing. It shouldn't be that way. The rates should be even, in my opinion, because when you raise rates for special occasions, that's I don't know how to word it. Other than price gouging, charging people more for the same service. What's the difference? There's no difference between, let's say you're flying from New York to Austin. I don't know if there's a flight that goes from New York to Austin or not, but we'll go with that. And normally, round trip costs you, let's say, $750. And then, let's say it's Thanksgiving, now it's holiday time, and then they jack you up to a round trip cost you, $1,500 for the same service. Nothing changed. Only what they're charging you. How is that fair?
Well, I mean, because more people are traveling in a sense, right? And even though that,
if more people are traveling, then it should cost less.
Yeah, but they can
because the more people they have on a plane, let's say they fill a plane with 100 passengers, then and they're getting X amount per passenger, but that trip only costs so much in fuel. It only costs so much in the pilot's pay, the stewardess's pay, and so on. All that only cost. Whereas if they only had 10 people on there, then you see what I'm saying?
Right, but
more people, it should be lower.
Right, but there's other websites that you can utilize though that kind of circumvents that. Like I believe, you know what? I should be literally like the advertiser for these things, but Red Tag or whatever. I think it's called Red Tag or something like that. And what it does.
Just a moment. Be right back.
Yeah, go ahead. But okay, so Linear, let me hit up your question. I mean, hell, being paid a lot. I wouldn't necessarily see that being like socialistic. What I would say is that it's more, it's fairer, right? And I think that when we look at socialism isn't necessarily based on fairness. It has a certain basis on equality, right? So let's just say if we look at Canada, for instance, where we're both from, if we look at Canada, right, with healthcare, everybody is a universal healthcare. It's not like, oh, okay, well, I need to pay for healthcare or a certain percentage for the healthcare that I need. It's already paid for. But that means that our taxes is sky high too, right? Compared to places.
I don't think they're sky high though. I know they're higher, but I don't think we may consider it sky high. But when you look at what they're getting back in return for that higher tax rate, schooling, healthcare, and so on, they're getting a lot more back from it, than we are.
Right, but what I would like to also push back on too is that if you look at these nations at this very moment, right, like the Nordic nations and so on and so forth, the majority of them aren't necessarily paying for their defense. They have a defense force, but they're not paying for their defense. The majority of time, they're there with the United States, and the United States is the place that is actually defending them more than their own individuals in a certain extent. I know I'm going to be shot down by stating that, but it's true. The reality is it's true. And if the U.S. were to pull back and say, you know what, we're going to be isolationists, you yourself can do whatever you want. If you want to protect yourself, you protect yourself, whatever the situation is. I promise you, the amount of money that has gone into the schools and that has gone into their healthcare and that has gone into all these sort of sectors will slowly but surely start to drain, because the majority of that money would be going into defense. But because the United States of America is the defense of the world, the police force of the world, that it itself made itself.
Our military are the bullies of the world.
I disagree with that, but that's just me.
I know. So even the United Nations, I don't remember what year it was, but the U.S. is actually considered the greatest threat to world peace because of our interventions here and there. We meddle in, whether it would be the Middle East or whether it was Vietnam or South America. There's been other attempts at socialist governments that America has, either directly or indirectly, they've directly, in the sort of coups, like, for example, what was it, 1953 Iran, I think it was 52 or 53 Iran coup, where the U.S., the CIA planned for this and paid for it, and to overthrow a democratically elected president. If the U.S. forces were out supposedly spreading democracy, then why are we overthrowing democratically elected officials in other countries?
Mm-hmm.
It's all to put people in power that are more capitalistic in nature, because capitalism also allows for the raping and pillaging of lands and go on. There's so many examples.
Like, don't get me wrong. I can see why certain individuals would think that particular way, but to me, I don't necessarily agree with that, because even with the nations that we do see, and people are like, I can't believe that. Like, let's just say with Nike, right? Predominantly with the Nike company, you see that places like Indonesia and Malaysia and stuff like that are put into these, which is horrible. Obviously, these sweatshops, which then you see like just horrible things happening within them. But I think the reality, and slowly but surely, these, well, maybe not the companies in of themselves, but I think that the companies can't do anything about it because it's within different nations, and those nations are the ones that are providing for this cheaper labor, right? So the company can't be like, hey, stop doing, because they don't own the sweatshops. They use the sweatshops, which you can say is either bad or good. If you're a company that's making money, you would think that that's fantastic. If you're a person looking at the situation within these sweatshops, it's absolutely horrendous, right? But if you're looking at the nation in and of itself, the nation can tackle that if they so well want to. But the problem is, and I know a lot of people talk about lobbying, and no, the businesses lobby the foreign governments in order to keep these sweatshops running. But the reality of the situation is that the governments, if they so well wanted to, can stop and seize those sweatshops, and let alone the sweatshops aren't owned by the companies; they're owned by a third party that the company just uses in order to make cheaper or to make the product that they're making for cheaper on them in order to sell it into the general market, right? So even though like you
again, that's all about profit. That's all. Again, that's all about making profit over people's lives and the condition of people's lives.
Absolutely, but I can't necessarily point the finger at the business and say, "Oh, well, you can't." Like, if there's something that's there, and the government of that nation isn't shutting down those places, well, why is it wrong for the business to say, you know what, I'll use your third party, I'll use this third party in order to actually benefit me, right? Like, even though it's horrendous.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Where capitalism basically is all about benefit me, or how can I make more money? How can I increase my profit? Fatten my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the greater good. It's how can I make money, regardless of how the workers are being treated, or
Right.
what their benefits are. Walmart, for example, is a perfect example of how unfettered capitalism is horrible. Walmart employees get treated horribly. I know. I used to work for Walmart. Practically all their stuff comes from China. And it's all about making a profit. It's profits over people. Whereas
Right.
democratic socialism is people over profits.
Absolutely, but even if you look at those nations, right? Like, let's just look at Norway. Norway still has oil. Exactly, Linear. Papa Archon, indeed. Norway still has oil. They still utilize their oil reserves. Now, the thing is that they utilize their oil reserves differently, but they still utilize those oil reserves. Now, if we're looking at, let's just say, what it does to the ecosystem within that general area, we can literally say, well, oil is still not a good thing, even though that they're putting all the pricing of the oil companies, right? Oil companies, all the money that they're getting back from that oil company that they have out in the ocean. What they do is that they put it as reserves, which is smart. I will agree, but still, they're messing up the ecosystem of that general area. So again, it's beneficial for obviously the collective, and it's a lot of money that they're making in order to actually protect their general populace. But at the same exact time, they're sadly destroying the environment which is within that general area. So again, I think that socialism or capitalism, yes, is about the dollar, but at the same exact time, we got to look at what is the benefit that's going to come out from or to the nation that is going to be getting these types of new innovative technologies and new ways of transportation and everything like that. I think like at the moment, people kind of look and are like, oh my God, what does that even matter? But then after most people have iPhones, most people have computers, most people have all these things that were created via companies that literally, as we both stated, use third-party systems that abuse their workers and stuff like that, like in sweatshops and so on and so forth. But we still buy shoes. It doesn't stop us from buying shoes. We still buy clothing. It doesn't stop us from buying clothing. We still buy product because we're the ones that benefit in the end. Obviously, we got to look at like who is benefiting and who is not within like those who are in poverty, those who are above the poverty line, those who are middle class, those who are rich, and those who are ultra rich, right? But still, nonetheless, society where it is now is much greater prior to our grandparents' time and our great grandparents' time, and even before to our great 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 grandparents' time. And all this was created based on the capitalistic system. All that we have now and our benefits and everything like that, and let alone the technology that helps us beat cancer, the technology that helped literally beat measles and everything like that came from capitalism. So like we got to look at a particular, like sometimes it's very difficult to do so, and I agree, but sometimes you got to look at how are things working within the nation that is predominantly having these companies. What is the circumstances, and how do we and how are we benefited in the end from these companies? Now, yes, is there corruption with big business on
That's just it.
our
It's not us to benefit. It's the companies. It's the board of directors. It's the investors. Shareholders. They're
right?
making money. We're
Oh,
with
absolutely.
capitalism. Capitalism. Those who, for example, back to Bezos. He owns the people that own the company, whether it be a means of production or a service, whatever. Capitalism allows them to grow their wealth exponentially, but it's taking advantage of those who work in their factories, works in their stores, works in their warehouses. Yeah.
Right. But the also the reality is that when we're looking at the people, like, yes, the workers who work within those factories and everything like that, but that's why we have strikes. That's why we have all these things that occur, right? And that's kind of like how a system really starts to reform itself, right? And that's how companies reform themselves. They see a strike happening, they're like, oh crap, I can't get my stuff out there. How do I benefit my workers who are striking? And I think that the reality is that if there's a certain
I don't think how can I benefit my workers who are striking is what they're thinking. It's what can we do to get them back to work so we can continue making money.
absolutely, but that's what it is though. They literally, it's like, how do we make money? But the only way that we can make money is to benefit the workers in some particular way, right? We
Yeah,
got to
but
be
usually
in the middle
again, it
ground.
usually doesn't happen until strikes occur.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. There needs to be like, and that's when I just stated in the beginning, right? Workers don't understand the amount of power that they have, and that's the reality of the situation. People are so into the status quo that they don't realize that them striking can change an entire system and actually benefit them more than it actually benefits the businesses in the long run. But the thing is that workers need to work in order to pay their bills,
But
and
see,
they
yeah,
think
but
of the here and now rather than how can I benefit tomorrow. What's a
mm,
better tomorrow for us and the workers?
mm. Except for it's not. It's just, for example, a lot of Texas, for example, Texas is a right to work state. Yeah, and about the right.
My apologies. Could you repeat that?
The right to work Texas, for example, as several others are too. I'm not sure how many are states are right to work, but it was right to work states or states that have enacted legislation that guarantees no individual can be forced as a condition of employment to join or pay dues or fees to a labor union. So, but there's also, where was it? Hold on. There was another one here. Basically, its name takes rights away from it. Let me hold on. This isn't loading right. Yeah.
Okay.
This is from the AFL-CIO site. So the right to work is a name for a policy designed to take away rights from working people. Backers of right to work laws claim that these laws protect workers against being forced to join a union, whereas the reality is the federal law already makes it illegal to force someone to join a union. So the real purpose of right to work laws is to tilt the balance towards corporations and further rig the system at the expense of working families. Let me see. There was another. I had a comparison chart here. Where'd it go? I lost it. Let me pull up Wikipedia. Yeah.
Right. like, and for instance, like, I do agree what Linear stated also, which is, uh well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have almost no power. I agree with that.
Most people are though.
Right,
Even
right,
people
right.
even people that think they're doing all right, and doing good and making payments on their home, so on. They don't realize just how close they are to even being homeless themselves, even
Oh,
you know,
you're absolutely
to
right.
living like the way you. And with the whole debt system we have with credit cards and so on, people, if somebody loses their job, most people, don't have enough saved, for emergency funds,
Yeah,
for
you're
the last 6 months, and so people are a lot closer, not to losing everything than they realize.
yeah,
You know,
you're
and like
absolutely right.
Linear said, I agree with Linear when he said, rent needs to be cheaper. So does hell. My friend, roommate John, we were talking the other day about this. He was some numbers on as far as, I think it was John Oliver. Yeah, John Oliver did an episode on housing costs, and
Hmm.
it was excellent art. So, but Austin, there from this time last year to this year, the average, I think the average for home payment or something, monthly home payment rose 50%. Some people saw their rent, their monthly payments go up $500 a month.
Hmm.
That's ridiculous. And all this because there's some states actually have legislations against regulating the housing market at all. So basically, they can charge whatever they want. That's part of our problem with the housing is there's so much being built, that's all like these apartments, where they got the shops underneath, and this, they got pools and trees on top of the apartment building and stuff like that. It's all higher up, housing. They're not building enough, low or affordable housing complexes. Yeah, and there's a lot of places where they're selling and building. They'll tear down one house and put up four smaller, you know, almost like duplexes, stuff like that, all on one property. Or they'll buy it up and they'll turn it into a rental property and so on. So our housing situation is, like other situations in America, is fucked.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with that. But that's one of the reasons why I completely agreed with Linear, right? If we are looking at how much individuals, and that's why again, it should be I should be pointing down in the comment section, be like, look at Singapore comment section. Um, when we look at how individuals or how income is generated, what they do is they follow inflation. When there's deflate or devaluation of certain things, they'll lower the currency as well in order to actually keep on par with either the devaluation of something, or if we start seeing inflation, they'll actually increase a person's wage with, or not just a person's wage, everybody's wage, with the amount of inflation which is happening. So at the same time, people are able to keep afloat and people still have money to work with while
That
inflation.
hasn't happened. That hadn't happened though. If workers rate with wages had kept up, with inflation all these years, minimum wage right now would be, around $20 an hour or so, I believe. Here, let me look that up again real quick.
Right. So that's the whole entire thing. Like, what is actually called is called smart capitalism, right? Because again, I think that the socialistic system even if it has capitalistic tendencies to it, is going to fail because it needs people in order to hold it up. With capitalism, the thing that's different, or at least with smart capitalism, is that what it does is that it keeps everybody at a even what the hell is it called, even wage with inflation. So when you have more inflation, your prices, your not your cost, but the price rises. But when we actually start seeing costs of housing and everything like that drop, well, the government actually drops the wages in order to meet that, right? So there can be certain time periods if there's inflation, like, yeah, you're right, that you can be making
Yeah,
$20, maybe even
20, yeah,
$25.
20, according to Business Insider, $27 an hour is
Yeah,
what it'd be now if it kept up with inflation.
absolutely. But the thing is that inflation doesn't constantly grow. There's a time where, and I forget what it's called. I think it's called devaluation or something like that.
Mm.
Whatever, but that means like the prices start dropping, like inflation stops, everything starts to drop, and then they'll follow that with your currency. So you're not just going to be making $27 an hour forever or whatever the situation is. Once that starts to drop or starts to even out or whatever, your price or the price that you're making will drop as well. So let's just say if the normal average rate of 1350 was enough for somebody to actually live on or something like that without constant inflation, right? Well, then what that means is that it'll stay at 1350 so that people can have could have at least some sort of uh, I forget what this statement is, working to live, not living to work, in a sense, right?
Mm.
And that's what Singapore provides for its people. And that's why I like smart capitalism more than even socio-capitalistic type economic ideologies,
Mm.
or even socialistic ideologies, or as what we call within the United States, predatory capitalism. Predatory capitalism is a problem, and the
It's a
reality,
huge problem.
it is. But the reality is that I think what we're starting to see is that the real problem is monopolization or syndicalism, because syndicalism allows for a company to monopolize in a certain area, and that
Mm.
means that no other competition can reach its heights, right?
Yeah, and that's
And
that's
if
where
that is
that's where Facebook and Google and Apple and all of them are now.
absolutely. But the government can, if it so well wanted to, could protect smaller businesses from the larger businesses and not help them grow, but allow them to kind of grow within the environment without having larger
That's
businesses.
where regulations come in.
Right, but that's still a huge capitalistic system, because we're not saying let like tax businesses, because if you tax businesses, those smaller businesses won't be able to get to that point either. They won't be able to rise. They'll be paying taxes most of the time, which actually causes huge amounts of problems. And just like here in Quebec, what I constantly hear is it's super hard for businesses to open because they're being wham-based with taxes. They're being wham-based with these other surtaxes and stuff like that. And then let alone they got to pay for the equipment, and let alone they got to actually pay out for whatever, if you're talking about pool businesses, for instance, right? Well, they need to buy product for the pool business along with the taxes, along with paying for the building that they're using if they haven't outright bought it, and so on and so forth. Is ridiculous, or whatever, for a business within a socialistic system to even start to grow in the first place. And that's why when I'm looking at, and a lot of times even within the social democratic or social democracy, for instance, or the system of the Nordic way, right? Most of the businesses that you see now, unless you're talking about Angry Birds, the company that created Angry Birds, or the other company that created, what the fuck was it called? Spotify and stuff like that. They were able to make their money because a lot of people utilized their platforms and spent money in order to have what's it called, to not have ads and everything like that, right?
Premium accounts.
Exactly. Premium. Thank you. Premium accounts. So they were able to make money based on how many people utilize their platform and bought premium accounts, right? But the reality is that most businesses that are big within the Nordic countries were there prior to the Nordic model was even created to begin with. So these companies were able to stay afloat, just like IKEA, for instance, was there prior to the Nordic model even coming to fruition, right? So that's why they're able to kind of take the weathering of the Nordic model. But if you look at any other companies trying to make to grow within the Nordic model, it's harder for them to do so and everything like that. And it's the same as I think here in Quebec. It's harder for businesses to grow within Quebec when you're being taxed constantly and land-based with all these taxes. And henceforth, what I would say is that I think that we need to lower taxes but protect the smaller businesses that are trying to rise up. And if we're able to protect those smaller businesses, there'll be more competition. Through more competition, prices will lower. And through the lowering of prices, you as the individual that wants a better phone plan, you as an individual that wants a better or a lower extent of travel, right? Like, oh shit, well, this train costs this much money for me to get onto it, but the train that's being created to go elsewhere or whatever, or not elsewhere, but in the same direction, actually has lowered its pricing. So I'll take that one rather than this one that is owned by the government and stuff like that. That's how capitalistic system works. Capitalistic system can only work if you have competition and you want competition against companies so that companies start lowering their prices. And that's the only way how we can actually...
That's the theory. Yeah, that's the theory behind it.
Oh no, it's actually not. It's not a theory. We can even look at Israel, for instance. Israel is one of the biggest nations, biggest startup nations there is, in a sense. And yet, what ends up happening is that because there's so many people creating businesses in Israel, everything is like super low. Everything is like super. The pricing is so low because there's not really anybody monopolizing on other people. Monopolization is the problem. Proper capitalistic competition is not the problem. And we've actually seen this in the beginning of the United States. If we look at like 1790 maybe all the way up to 1850 until Vanderbilt literally started his own monopolization of the transportation businesses and stuff like that. You actually had so many people lowering their prices to such an extent because there was so much competition. And that's what you need, is that you need much more competition to be out there in order to actually lower pricings in the first place. If you have monopolization, then companies feel that there's no need to compete, and henceforth, why the hell am I going to lower prices? People are going, because I'm the only one with this airport. I'm the only one with this travel agency. So they need to go through my pricing. So I can jack up the prices however much I want. If they want to travel, they need to use me. But if you have all these other flights and stuff like that that are around them, what's the number one thing? Oh shit, I gotta lower my price because buddy over here, WestJet, has decided to lower their price to $500 per flight or full round trip flight or whatever, or direct flight, right? And if that is the case, then I have to lower my pricing unless I'm going to lose out in the end. And that's why huge juggernaut businesses of the past weren't able to compete with now big juggernaut businesses of today, because they didn't adapt to the changing times.
Well, like I said to begin with, I'm not pure socialist. I lean more toward democratic socialism, than anything. But because democratic socialism brings three things: democracy, socialism, and capitalism. It brings them all together. It combines the safety net of a socialist economy, with the wealth, of capitalism, wealth creation of capitalism within the democratic system. So where the organizational structure of the government is democracy, and under democratic socialism, the elements of society that provide for your basic human needs like healthcare, childcare, labor protection, and so forth are owned and collected by the government. Whereas it also recognizes the importance of private enterprise, so it embraces aspects of capitalism in terms of economic structure. So, but again, when the two are combined, it's more tight. It's back to regulations, because without regulations, companies are going to do what they want, to make that buck, at the cost of the environment, at the cost of workers, at the cost of people's lives. For example, Flint, Michigan, again, or other places where waste is, there's neighborhoods actually, and this ties into racial inequality as well. But there's subdivisions that are built on top of old waste dumps, where the radioactive waste dumps, where I can't remember, just read an article the other day about it. I'm not sure where it's at. Where and the government wasn't even required to let people know that they were living on toxic ground. And people ended up having, different over time, different issues arise, tumors, cancer, birth deformities and so forth from people living there over time, because they were in they had warnings, don't let your kids play out in the grass and dirt, try to keep your kids from playing out in the grass and dirt. How's that going to work? Yeah, stay on the concrete. That's not going to work with kids.
Right. But I think too, like the problem with that was that it wasn't corporations necessarily that were doing that. It was the government itself, because predominantly, and definitely if we're looking at nuclear waste and stuff, predominantly nuclear waste comes from government owned plants.
I'm not talking about just nuclear waste. There's other toxic waste. Yeah. Let me go with this first. Okay.
Yeah, no problems. But so that's why I think, like, with the cost of, just like how Linear was talking about, cost of living in general needs to actually be cheaper in a sense. And that's nothing to do with businesses or anything like that. What that has to do is actually with the government that's allowing the now I'm forgetting how the circumstance happens.
There's several examples just off the top. Google page: Philadelphia, the Love Canal, New Orleans, Gordon Plaza. All built on landfills to have toxic water. Here's one on Philadelphia, for example. When was this? This article was published October 15th, 2019, and it's talking about. Let's see. Yeah, the Clearview landfill operated on marshy land alongside Darby Creek between the 50s and the 70s. Accepting municipal demolition and hospital waste. Before the dump opened, people lived in Eastwick, scattered among houses and farms surrounded by wetlands. Let's see. In the 50s, the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority began to establish a new plan for the area under the leadership of Ed Bacon. They reimagined the low-lying area as a city within a city, where tens of thousands of aspiring workers and middle-class families could find affordable homes and a leafy yard. But it was built, like I said, it was built on top of the landfill. And let's see, it has an article. Yeah. In 85, 81 homeowners and renters filed a suit against the city because rashes and illnesses and other problems from it. I think a lot of that probably came from the hospital waste, probably.
Right. I think
still, where companies are allowed to, just, that's fun up. But it's the corporations that dump there to begin with. So.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. But wouldn't you say that it's the government's fault for actually trying to utilize that area for people to actually live?
So that wasn't federal government though. That was city.
Yeah, but that was the city. But that's still the government, the governmental authority, right, of that general area. So I would say that it's still. Again,
with regulations could have kept that place from happening in begin with, if there'd been regulations.
Right, but I mean, but that's the question though, right? Like if we're talking about hospitals, if hospitals do have waste, where do you put the waste? Because there's
nowadays most hospitals have incinerators.
Yeah, but at that time, I mean,
at that time it didn't. Right.
It's not gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like when we're looking at hospitals nowadays, and most probably what was one of the things that kind of made hospitals do that in the first place was that, well, again, it was probably the municipal government or being fined and sued by people who the hospitals in the first place weren't thinking about harming people. They weren't like, let's put this here so that people can live on top of these fills or whatever. Right. They had no idea that people were going to live there. That's why they created those fills in the first place. It was the government or municipal governments that saw that being land and said, oh, well, let's use this for some particular people to live on or whatever. And that's the problem, is that it's not necessarily the businesses, because a business had to deal with the waste to begin with, right? And at that point in time, there really wasn't any better way to deal with that waste. Now there is underneath, and I believe that it's a capitalist system that truly benefited hospitals from getting rid of that waste, in a sense, because you can now put that money that you now have into actually protecting the environment and into actually incinerating this waste so that it doesn't actually have any effects like it did to those other individuals. So again, I kind of see the capitalistic system winning out in the end, even with that example. It's a horrendous state of affairs. I'm not saying that it's not. Yeah. But just in the end, I think, again, it's the monetary value of that particular hospital that ended up, that helped them change the entire perspective of how they get waste.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's why, again, I don't necessarily think the issue is like raising taxes on the rich. I think the issue is allowing for more competition so that the rich need to actually start thinking again and strategizing, because there's a lot
I don't think it's about raising taxes on the rich to begin with. It's about making them pay their fair share, because there's so many loopholes that allow them, to not pay taxes and accumulate more and more wealth. Those loopholes need to be closed. They need to be paying a fair share just like everybody else does. So do the corporations.
Right, but the thing is that we can do that, and we can tax the rich, where the majority of, as I stated, rich individuals will leave. We have the same exact problem here in Canada, where people who are doctors and everything like that, and even those who are rich, are moving to the United States because they're realizing that they're getting wham-based with so much shit that it's like, why am I going to stay here to deal with that? I'd rather move to the United States, make my money, and save lives, right? And the reality is that most people go into these areas of expertise. Yes, I'm not saying they don't want to save people's lives. Of course they do, but they know that there's going to be a benefit from doing that. I'm putting all this time in my schooling, so when I get to that point where I'm now a doctor, I'm going to be making much more money than the normal citizen. Now, if you're being taxed even more than the normal citizen and everything like that because you're in a higher tax bracket, that kills all
I mean,
incentive.
that's one thing I disagree with. I don't think there should be. I think it should be an even tax across the board.
Interesting.
Instead of tax brackets. Just whatever, whether it be, I don't know what the percentages are. Let's just go with 15%. Just throw that out there. If it was 15%, it should be same across the board. Yeah, even.
Okay. Okay. I
That's my
I
thoughts
somewhat
on as
agree with
far as
that.
taxes.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with that. I think that that's a more equal way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But I think because the problem is that when people monopolize, right, they're able to find these loopholes to begin with. If you're not monopolizing anymore, if you're not monopolizing anymore because now you have competition, that actually in a sense will benefit the person who is getting right the materials in the first place, because now what governments do they make things, or they're like, oh, the new thing, iPhone 13 or whatever,
Mm,
iPhone 13 looks like the damn iPhone 12, looks like the damn iPhone 11. Like,
yeah.
there's not, there's not that much shit that's changing on the iPhone 13,
Yeah.
except for like maybe what, two apps, and
Right.
now your emoji face can like digivolve to your real face or something. I don't know, but
Mm,
like really, for the price that you're paying for these phones, you're not really getting anything in return. Now,
mm,
let's just say you have more phone companies that are out there, right? Now, what does the company need to do? Shit, I can't just put this there. I can't just put, oh, iPhone 14 and it has two new apps that nobody cares about. The supposed 5G network, which
mm,
God knows what the hell that's going to do. And that's predominantly it, right? Like, oh, okay,
mm.
and plus it has the 30 cameras instead of three or whatever the hell it is. It doesn't matter in the end. What one thing that does matter though is that if you have a lot of competition, now they got to think, I can put 40 cameras on the back of this, but people are going to jump on to other companies that are actually revolutionizing the phone business, right?
Mm.
That they're actually putting forward something that we didn't even think of that needed to be, that benefits the buyer, right? And
Mm.
that's the whole entire point in the end, is that we want to benefit from the companies that are providing these products and
Mm.
everything like that. And if we can actually benefit to a greater whole from these companies creating better products that we can
Mm.
buy at a cheaper expense, then I think, or to cheaper expense, to a cheaper extent, then I think the best way of actually doing it is, as maybe as you stated, keep the taxes the same, but at the same exact time allow competition to rise by
Mm.
protecting the smaller businesses so that they can ramp up and they can, except for being bought out right away, right?
Mm.
And they can kind of compete with these big global companies and stuff like that, and could show them a thing or two, and we benefit in the end,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Right. I think one of the ways to go is co-ops. There are a lot of successful co-ops out there. And I think that's the way to go. Where with co-ops, the workers pretty much and basically own the company. Really, yeah.
Well, I
From my
mean,
understanding, they don't really own it, but they have a lot of great control over their wages and so on.
hmm,
But in the U.S., we already have some socialist aspects already. Or Social Security. That's a socialist type program. Food stamps, that's a socialist type program.
hmm,
So we have different elements already that we incorporate.
right. Wow, I'm just messing up my hair right now. But all in all, I think the reality is that even with the cooperatives, right? I
Mm,
think that there's a better way of actually doing that, like a kind of pseudo, I guess you could say, cooperative, and that would be to allow workers to buy stock in the company that they're working for. And if they're able to do that, then they actually get dividends, or not dividends, because dividends are based on companies that are kind of like unstable in a sense, and then like that causes other problems, obviously. But they get returns, I should say, on their investment within the company. If the company does well, they get the returns as well. They might not have as large a stock hold as obviously the CEO or something, but they do get returns back, and I think that's something that would be beneficial.
That's like one great example. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was on 60 Minutes some time ago. The owner of Chobani yogurt, the Greek yogurt. Where I don't know if you saw that, but he gave all his employees, raise, up to X amount. I can't remember what it was, and the bonuses, stock, and whatnot. And another good example of what is his name? Oh shit, Dan something. Hold on, let me look it up.
Yeah, but I do, like, after this, I will need to close the thing. But go ahead, please, do your thing, and then after, I'll have to close it, and we can say our final thoughts, and then it is
Dan Price. Yeah, I don't know if you heard of Dan Price or not. He's the co-founder and chief executive of a credit card processor called Gravity Payments.
I know.
Yeah, back in 2015, he gained recognition back in 2015 after he raised the minimum salary of his employees to $70,000 a year and lowered his own to 70 from 1.1 million. So he lowered his own wage down to 70,000 a year and raised the minimum salary of his employees up to 70,000. I don't know if you should check him out, follow him on Twitter, and check out his posts on LinkedIn and so on. Dan Price in my mind, he's a great example of what CEOs should be like and how running companies should be. He's a people, basically he is capitalist, but he puts people over profit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, but and I think that he's done a fantastic job at showing that. But again, that's up to the person who owns the business, right? And he's the one that went that particular way. But I think that in the end, right, the extent is that you want, if you put the CEO's feet to the fire, right, which means more competition, they themselves won't be able to give themselves kickbacks, because most of that money that predominantly gets put into kickbacks is going to be put into product and everything like that. And if they're starting to lose money, then what's the number one thing that they're going to do? They're going to lower their own pricing, their own what the hell is it called? Their own wages, and let alone they might, if they feel that the company that's finally, yeah, sure. But yeah, so
sorry about that.
No worries. But yeah, that's the thing that I'm looking at in the end, is that right now it is kind of up to the CEOs to decide what they wish to do. The thing is that if you put their feet to the fire through competition, then they have to start to either lower their own wages, because they can't continue to give themselves kickbacks because they need to put their money into R&D, right? Or if you put them with competition with another business or other growing businesses around them, what will happen is that their workers, if they feel that other new company is going to pay them better, they'll move to that company. So that business that before screwed over their workers were like, holy shit, now I got to raise my wages, the wages for my workers in order to compete with them. And you hit multiple birds with one stone through having competition, and let alone the government needs to do fuck all except for protect small businesses. That's all they need to do. Protect small businesses, and you'll see everything that you spoke about.
And the environment. Protect the environment as well.
Right, but the environment isn't within the jurisdiction of the businesses. The environment is underneath the government's jurisdiction. So the government needs to stand up for the environment. If the government doesn't have the cojones to stand up for the environment.
That's where regulations come in. Regulations to protect the environment, to protect workers, and so on.
Right, but I'm just saying that regulations should only be put, I would agree, with the environmental. Everything else will work itself out through competition. Everything else will work itself out through competition. Like for workers will move to better jobs if they see that employer A is screwing them over by paying them $13.50, and employer B is paying their employees this higher wages, as to say $17, right, for doing the same exact thing. And the employee is going to say, well, thank you for the time that I've spent here, but you can go F yourself. I'm going over there. And what's going to happen is that buddy is either going to have to be first off a moron in order to be like, no, I'm going to keep my wages the way that they are, and see everybody who was working for him jump ship, or he's going to be smart and be like, shit, I got to rise my price either to $17 or even higher in order to get my other employees back from buddy. So all these things work out through competition. The only thing that doesn't work out through competition, which I would agree, is the environment. And the environment should only be underneath, in the first place, the jurisdiction of the government. And the government needs to have the balls, in a sense, to say, you can't do this because it harms the environment. If they're unable to do that, there's not much that anybody can do. And the businesses are only doing things that would benefit them in the beginning. So you have to put that those type of legislations for the environment in the first place. So I think out of everything that we've discussed, I think that I agree the most with you is that competition will not help the environment whatsoever. 1 second. Competition aspect can work if people are given what they need first and foremost and can afford to look for other job, quit their job.
I agree with that. Lost audio.
Yeah, linear. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But that's why we need that's why we need competition, because at the same time, competition also breeds how we interact with our work, or with our, like, I'm a businessman. Competition also helps businesses formulate new ways to tackle new problems, right? So if there's people working like a dog, let's just say, working while they're sick as a dog, right? The reality is that a business owner who's like, you know what, I want to care more for my workers, so I'm going to say, if you're sick, you can take that day off, or you can do that, or whatever, and they're more understanding, right? Well, who's going to win in the first place? The person who's more understanding, because the workers also aren't stupid. They're not going to be like, I don't know what's happening. Like, they'll see people, and people talk. It's sort of like, oh my God, today at work, like, I was sick and everything, but I had to work anyways, and I had to go in because I would lose my job if I didn't, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you would see another person be like, well, I don't have that with my business. Like, my boss allows me to take 6 days off or whatever if I need to, right? And that's the whole entire point. That's the whole entire situation that we need to bring forward. Is more competition will bring it balances out everything in the end, I believe, into a better situation for the workers, because that's the only way. Like, if you really look at it, right, when you look at the mom and pop shops and stuff like that, what do you predominantly see are individuals who actually treat their workers relatively fair, because they know that they can lose their worker to other mom and pop shops, or let alone to bigger corporations. So they have to kind of be like, okay, well, if you're feeling sick, you stay home today and everything like that. Obviously, you can't abuse that either. You can't be like, I'm sick again, and I'm sick again, and I'm sick. Like, okay, like, I'm sorry, but you got to fix you, whatever the situation may be, right? And if there are, let's just say, problems or uh, let's just say mental deficiencies or whatever the situation may be, that needs to be brought out to the employer or whatever, or that needs to be the government's own thought process as well, right? Like, I think that for sick leave, that needs to be predominantly the government's area of expertise, not necessarily for businesses, because the businessman and let alone the employee are only looking for individuals who want to work in the first place. But that's why again, I gotta create a link for the Singapore system. But for the Singaporean system, I see it completely and absolutely what I think. Don't even know. That's what I mean, right, Linear? I'm the ultimate Singaporean spokesman here. Be like, let's go. Check the link of Singapore right here, right now. See, move there. Be a Singaporean citizen. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I do need to end the stream though. So everybody who has been watching, thank you very much for watching the stream. Actually, before I even say that, Thomas, off the chain atheist, my friend, what are your final statements for tonight?
Honestly, I don't know. Other than, like I said, I think moving forward it's going to be, a collaborative, combination of, different. It's going to take democratic, socialist, different aspects, to mesh together. How, if possible. I don't know. All I know, I don't think capitalism as it itself is sustainable as it is. I think like I said, it's gonna take a combination. It's pure socialism won't work either. But I don't know. Final thoughts are a good conversation, a little bit fun. So
Likewise.
I've learned a couple of things from you.
And likewise too.
Cool.
So I do appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I hope if ever you do want to come back on whatever's subject matter, I will definitely ask. And if you want to jump on, please. It's going to be great because I love having you on. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. Maybe sometime on the topic of Christian nationalism and dominionism and manifest destiny.
Yeah,
that would be a good topic. That's one thing I'm starting to see more, more news articles and stuff like that. Even like AP News, had articles on it, but still don't see. I haven't seen that many, that I can think of any atheist YouTubers covering the subject. I think a while back Seth Andrews did, and a couple other minor ones, but not really seeing it talked about a whole lot.
Then let's bring it to light, my friend. Let's bring it to goddamn light. All right.
Sounds good.
So
I've got a bunch of bookmarks for that too.
oh, that is fantastic. And I'll get my own bookmarks as well, and we can definitely tackle that subject matter 100%. But again, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. You're always welcome whenever. So again, thank you. This was amazing. As for the viewers, I want to thank you all for coming in, staying tuned, watching, and engaging with the comments section. If you do want to support the Atheist Enlightenment, we do have a Patreon that you can go to, which will be 1 second. I don't know where the link went, but we do have a Patreon link for you. So if you do want to help support this YouTube channel and support me so that we can continue having great conversations such as this, then it would be greatly appreciated by anybody. So again, if you like what you see, please smack that like and subscribe button. And for now, I will have to say that let's create this Atheist Enlightenment together. Have a great night. Good. I'm your host, Josh the Archon, and I
Good night, everyone.
Do hope you had a wonderful time. Tomorrow, we'll be discussing Roe v. Wade. So stay tuned and have a great night. Peace out.